She was just a shadow on the sidewalk. Fur matted. Bones showing. Eyes tired of hoping. People passed by, fast, distracted, indifferent. No one saw her. No one cared. Except for one old man. He lived alone in a crumbling house at the edge of town. His days as quiet as his evenings. No visitors. No phone calls. Just silence. But that day, he saw her. Not as a stray. Not as a burden. But as a soul, just as lost as his. He opened the door. She stepped inside. And neither of them were alone again. This is the story of a cat no one wanted. And the man who gave her everything he had left. Because sometimes, the most powerful love stories don't begin with fireworks. They begin with a second glance. She had no name. Just matted fur, torn ears, and a limp that made her movements slow and painful. She didn't meow for food anymore. She had learned no one listened. People called her that alley cat. Some shooed her away. Some threw stones. She slept in old cardboard boxes. Under rusted cars. Behind trash bins in the back of forgotten stores. Her ribs showed through her skin. Her tail was bent, likely broken and never healed. But her eyes still held a flicker of life. Not hope. Not joy. Just a quiet will to keep going. Every day, she walked the same path. Looking. Searching. But never finding. Until one day, she limped past a house she'd never noticed before. Old. Wooden. Cracking paint. Much like her, tired, aged, overlooked. Behind a dusty window, an old man sat alone. Watching. His name was Walter. A retired clockmaker. Widowed. No children. No visitors. He lived in a house that still ticked with the rhythm of old timepieces. Walls echoing with memories that no longer had voices. Every morning, he brewed one cup of tea. Every night, he ate alone. Neighbors barely knew his name. To most, he was that quiet man with the clocks. He rarely spoke. Rarely smiled. Rarely left. His wife had passed 7 years ago. And with her, went his laughter, his light, his reason to speak. He spent his days restoring clocks. But he couldn't fix the hours that now felt too long. That night, as rain began to fall, Walter stood at the window. And for the first time in years, he noticed something other than time. A cat. Shivering. Alone. He watched her curl up under the porch railing. A fragile shape. So still, he wasn't sure if she was breathing. Something inside him stirred. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. Because you see, loneliness knows loneliness. Even in silence. That night, Walter left a small bowl of milk near the door. He didn't expect her to drink it. But the next morning, it was empty. So he left another. And then, some tuna. Each day, she came a little closer. Never letting him touch her. But no longer running away. He sat by the window. She sat on the step. Two souls. A few feet apart. Bound by something neither could explain. He didn't name her. Not yet. He didn't speak. But somehow, she understood. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of stories, of grief, of quiet companionship. And slowly, the cracks in Walter's world began to shift. One evening, the rain came harder than usual. Thunder shook the windows. Lightning lit the sky. Walter sat in his armchair, heart uneasy. She wasn't there. No shape on the step. No shadow near the railing. He opened the door. The wind howled. The street was empty. For the first time in years. He stepped outside. His slippers soaked instantly. He shuffled down the porch, peering into the storm. Then, a faint cry. He followed the sound, his heart pounding. Behind the trash bins. Curled in a tight ball, shaking and soaked. She looked up at him with terrified eyes. And in that moment, Walter did something he hadn't done in a long time. He knelt down. Held out his arms. And whispered, "Come here, girl." She hesitated. Then limped forward. Into his arms. Into his life. Walter wrapped her in an old towel. She didn't resist. She lay in his lap like she belonged there. He lit the fireplace, made her a warm bed with a blanket. And placed it near the ticking clocks. Each tick like a heartbeat, steady, familiar. She didn't eat much that night. Just slept. Walter sat beside her, watching the rise and fall of her breath. He found himself whispering stories. About his wife. About how quiet the house had become. About the clocks he couldn't bear to part with. She didn't respond. But she stayed. And that was more than enough. He named her Lucy. A name his wife had once loved. Lucy, the little dancer, she used to say while reading bedtime stories. Now, that name lived again. In a cat who had danced through storm and pain to reach him. Walter fixed a basket for her near the fireplace. Every morning, he'd greet her with, "Good morning, little one." Every night, he'd whisper, "Sleep well." And for the first time in years, Walter didn't eat alone. Lucy began to heal. Her fur regained some softness. Her eyes, no longer hollow, now glowed with trust. She followed Walter from room to room. Watched him as he wound clocks. Rested in his lap as he repaired gears. He laughed again. Softly. Carefully. Like it was something foreign but familiar. Sometimes he'd say, "I think you saved me more than I saved you." Lucy would blink slowly. Purring in agreement. Neighbors began to notice the old man walking in the yard. With a cat perched on his shoulder. But healing isn't always forever. One morning, Lucy didn't wake up easily. She limped worse than before. Stopped eating again. Walter knew. He took her to the vet. The diagnosis was quiet but cruel. "She's very old, likely has cancer." There wasn't much they could do. Walter brought her home. Wrapped her in the same towel from that rainy night. And whispered, "I'm here. I won't leave you." Walter had already lost once. His wife. His world. Now, he was losing Lucy. But this time, he wasn't alone. This time, he had memories. Warm ones. Of soft fur. Shared silences. And eyes that once held nothing, now full of trust. One night, Lucy curled up beside him. She looked up, blinked once. Then closed her eyes. She never opened them again. Walter didn't cry. He simply sat there. Holding her. Letting the moment pass like the slow tick of a clock. Walter buried her in the backyard. Under the old oak tree. Placed a small stone, carved by hand. Lucy, the one who came back to life, and took me with her. And beside it, he placed an old watch. Still ticking. People in the town later said the old man changed after the cat came. He smiled more. Sat on the porch. Sometimes waved at neighbors. And then, one day, he too was gone. Peacefully, in his sleep. When they cleaned out his house, they found pictures of Lucy. Drawings. Notes. A journal titled, "The Cat Who Reminded Me How to Live." And on the very last page, in his old shaky handwriting, "Love doesn't need words. It needs presence." She was mine. And I was hers. And that was enough. Today, under that oak tree, both rest together. The stray cat no one wanted. The old man no one noticed. But their story lives on. In whispers. In memories. In hearts. Because sometimes, the most broken ones are the ones who heal others the most. Lucy didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be loved. And Walter didn't need a big family. He just needed one soul to remind him that life is still worth waking up for, even if it has pause.